My name is Piper Emerson. I'm 33 years old. The last time I had Christmas dinner with my family was over 8 years ago, in a red brick house on the outskirts of Minneapolis, where every wall was covered with pictures of my brother Blake, as if the entire house was a shrine to the perfect son my parents adored. From a young age I knew exactly where I stood in the family. A quiet shadow, easy to overlook. While Blake got a brand new bike every summer, I received hand-me-down running shoes from Mom, the kind she'd bought on Black Friday 3 years prior. Blake was the family's golden boy. Football team captain, straight-A student, and always had custom sandwiches packed by Mom for practice. And me? I was once left behind at school during a long parent-teacher night because no one realized I hadn't come home yet. I never said it aloud, but I remember my 16th birthday vividly. Blake got a brand new Toyota Tacoma. Me? Mom handed me a gas station cupcake and said, "I'm busy, you understand, right?" I nodded. I was used to no one really caring. Holidays were always emotionally exhausting. Every Christmas I had to prepare myself. One year, Blake got new Beats headphones, a Nike hoodie he had wanted, and a pair of authentic Jordans. I received a peppermint-scented candle and a pair of wool socks. Dad even joked, "To keep your feet warm while you try catching up with your brother." The way they spoke made me feel like I was some failed project they no longer had the patience to fix. I used to think it was just in my head. But my senior year in high school proved every doubt I ever had. By then, Blake was a sophomore at the University of Michigan with sky-high tuition, fully funded by our parents, including housing and a brand new MacBook. When I asked Mom if I could apply to a design school in Chicago, she frowned and said, "How much can you make with design? Be practical, we're not as financially comfortable as before." "But we had enough for Blake," I said, before I could stop myself. Mom paused for 3 seconds, then replied coldly, "Your brother had a clear direction. You've been jumping from one thing to another. I can't throw money away." I didn't respond. I just remember walking out of the living room, my throat tight, fists clenched around a scholarship application I had spent an entire week writing. When Blake came home for spring break that year, Dad threw a small family party. That gathering burned itself into my memory. During the toast, Dad proudly declared, "We have a real source of pride. Blake, with a 3.9 GPA and an internship offer from General Motors, we couldn't be more proud." Applause erupted. I sat at the corner of the table in silence, my plate of cold salad untouched. No one mentioned that I had just been awarded a full-ride scholarship to a top tech school in Boston. Not one question. Not one congratulation. Aunt Carol even asked what I was doing these days. "Piper's working part-time at a coffee shop." Mom answered for me with a tone dripping in implication. "She's still figuring things out." I remember Aunt Carol's pitying look and her reluctant nod, like I'd just announced I was repeating a grade. In that moment, I realized one thing clearly. I'd have to handle everything myself, and no one in that house truly believed I could succeed, or even deserved to. I didn't enter the world of tech because someone guided me. I stumbled into it like a lost traveler chasing a faint light at the end of a tunnel. One afternoon in March of senior year, while cleaning the school library for a few extra bucks, I found a thin paperback left behind on a shelf. Python for Beginners. I don't know why I didn't return it like the others. I took it home, turned on my desk lamp, and started reading. The first lines of code looked like a foreign language, yet they were strangely captivating. From that night on, I knew I'd found something that made me feel valuable. I started downloading materials, watching free online videos, pulling all-nighters in my cramped room just to type basic code as if my life depended on every keystroke. I didn't have a mentor, but I had something even more important: the will to prove I wasn't useless like they believed. 3 months later, I submitted a full-ride scholarship application to Brighton Institute of Technology in Boston, a public school with a strong cybersecurity program. I didn't tell anyone, not Mom, not Dad, not Blake. I submitted it at 3 a.m. while the house was asleep, and the wind rattled the window panes. 6 weeks later, I received an acceptance letter. I packed in silence. Mom thought I was moving to an apartment near my part-time job. "Don't forget to close the fridge before you leave," she said without even looking up. I didn't blame her. I was used to it. The interstate bus ride took nearly 8 hours. I sat by the window, watching the leafless trees fade behind me. Each mile stripped away layers of old memories, leaving behind a new version of myself, ready to begin again. The dorm was old but warm. My roommate was Talia, a brown-skinned girl from Detroit, majoring in robotics, with a laugh like wind chimes. That first night, we sat on the floor eating instant ramen and sharing secrets only those scarred by family could understand. I worked part-time at a coffee shop on Concord Street near the campus library. Each shift lasted 7 hours. My feet throbbed from standing all day, but every night I still opened my laptop to write code, like a solo warrior training in the dark. In my second year, I landed a summer research grant, assisting on a medical data encryption project in collaboration with a local hospital. It was the first time my name appeared as a co-author on a research paper. I printed it out, tucked it in a notebook. Not to brag, but to remind myself I was on the right path. I graduated with honors at 27. While my classmates posed for pictures with parents and family, I walked out of the auditorium alone, holding a bouquet Talia gave me. But I didn't feel lacking. For the first time, I felt complete. 3 weeks later, I accepted a job offer from Sentinel Secure, a firm specializing in security systems for financial institutions. Within 12 months, I was promoted to lead a project team overseeing transaction security for 3 major banks in the Northeast. What people once dismissed as dry technical work became the backbone of safeguarding hundreds of millions of dollars every day. I wasn't just fixing bugs, I was stopping threats. And that felt more powerful than any praise I had once begged my family for. 30. The company awarded me a personal bonus of $135,000 after my data breach prevention system launched internationally. I used it to buy a 2-bedroom apartment in South Boston, just 4 blocks from the place where I used to wash dishes. I pinned a world map to my wall and marked every place I wanted to go. No family photos, no graduation pictures. Just a whiteboard with a quote I wrote in black marker. "You don't have to be seen to be valuable." I rebuilt myself from scratch, not for revenge, but to never be dependent again. That was the first time I truly understood. Strength isn't in how others see you. It's in knowing who you are when no one's left to cheer you on. I never craved fame. I only wanted peace. A kind of peace I had to fight for. Hour by hour, step by step, with my own 2 hands. At 31, I signed an exclusive deal with an international bank headquartered in Toronto, transferring the security framework I'd spent over 10 months building. They didn't just pay well, they offered a one-time royalty payment of $150,000 after tax. Their legal rep emphasized, "This IP is going to save them millions annually, that number is fair." I didn't call anyone to share the news, I had no one to call. Instead, I sat in my cramped Boston apartment, opened the cheapest bottle of white wine I'd been saving, and played "Here Comes the Sun" by the Beatles. A strange ritual I'd adopted for every major milestone. 2 weeks later, I placed a down payment on a brownstone apartment in Carroll Gardens, Brooklyn. A 3-story building with red brick. The unit on the second floor had a tiny balcony that overlooked a garden and a sunlit corner perfect for a workspace. No one went with me to tour the place. I went alone, shook the realtor's hand, signed the contract, and drove my own U-Haul through a drizzly March afternoon. The apartment had nothing but a worn armchair and a desk I bought off Craigslist. But that first night, I slept peacefully. No quiet footsteps in the hallway. No mom's voice nagging in the living room. No one telling me I was delusional for dreaming. I lived simply. Woke at 7 a.m. for a jog around Cobble Hill Park, worked from 9 to 6, occasionally going into the office if needed. In the evenings I cooked, read, studied AI security, and sometimes drew diagrams on the wall for a design I was mulling over. No one pushed me, no one waited for me, and I felt whole. My friends, the ones I chose, not the ones assigned, were all uniquely good and fiercely resilient. Lisa was a lawyer turned carpenter. Jaden, a freelance photographer who dropped out of college to care for his ill mother. And me? I was Piper, the cybersecurity engineer who disappears and reappears, with a product that leaves corporations speechless. We didn't meet often, but when we did, it was genuine. No one asked about Blake. No one mentioned my parents. They understood. Some wounds don't need reopening. Just silence and space to scar over. 8 years had passed, and I hadn't called home once. My mom's number was still in my contacts, marked, "Do not answer." Every holiday, I received the same chilly emails from my dad, things like, "Happy Thanksgiving. Blake says hi." No name, no apology. Nothing had changed. Each time, I'd reply with the same sentence, "Received." No response necessary. I wasn't angry. I just no longer had the energy to hope. Sometimes when I passed the bakery where I once worked, I felt like a ghost who'd died in another life. That messy-haired girl, scrubbing floors in the middle of a snowstorm? She was gone. In her place was a calm woman who knew her worth, and no longer needed anyone's approval to confirm it. Occasionally at work, someone would ask, "How come Piper never brings a date to the end-of-year party?" Or, "Where's your family? Do you go home for the holidays?" I just smile and say, "I like keeping things private." And in New York, that answer was enough. People here understand that some silences are sacred. I didn't build an empire to show off. I built a world strong enough so I'd never be shoved out of one again. That's why I kept all my financial assets under an LLC, listed under a college friend's name. A safety net, in case someone accidentally remembered I still existed. One October night, while working late, my phone rang. The screen lit up. "Kayla? Cousin." I blinked. It was a new number. A message followed instantly. "Piper, do you have a minute? It's important. Uncle Henry and Aunt Janice are trying to reach you. They said the family wants you to come home for Christmas this year." I didn't reply to Kayla's message right away. I left my phone face down on the desk for 2 days. In the meantime, I went about my work as usual. Zoom meetings with Japanese partners, testing the internal alert systems, reviewing every line of code in a patch for a European banking project. But every time I looked up during a break, my eyes lingered on the corner of the screen, where Kayla's name still hovered in an unread notification. On the evening of the 3rd day, I sent back a single message. "If they truly want to see me, let them send an invitation." Less than an hour later, an email from my mother appeared in my inbox. Subject: "Come home, the family will be complete this Christmas." The content read like a cold administrative memo. "Piper, we hope you'll come home on the 24th. Blake and his family will be here too. Everyone's looking forward to seeing you after all these years." No mention of what had happened, no hint of remorse, just an order, dressed up as goodwill. I should have deleted it. I knew that. But instead, I sat there, staring at the line, "We hope," and exhaled long and slow. Maybe I needed to face them one last time, not for acceptance, but to finally close a chapter that had always lingered, unfinished, between 2 pages. On December 24th, I drove 6 hours from Brooklyn back to Bloomington, Minnesota. Snow lined the streets. Christmas lights twinkled on suburban rooftops. But house number 7129 looked exactly the same as when I left. Faded beige curtains, a rusted nameplate, and a barren flower bed out front, like a quiet, lasting insult. I rang the doorbell. It took nearly a full minute before footsteps approached. My mother opened the door, her face frozen, like she'd seen a ghost returned from the dead. "Oh, Piper, it's really you. Who else were you expecting?" I said, my voice calm but sharp enough to make her flinch. She pulled me in with a stiff hug. "You look different." The house still smelled of cheap cinnamon spray and vanilla candles, the scent of old Christmases I'd taught myself to forget. The living room was packed. Blake stood in the center, loudly recounting how he almost sealed a major real estate deal. His voice booming like he was the CEO of a Fortune 100 company. "Piper!" Blake called out when he spotted me. "Everyone, look! The mystery guest has arrived. What's the matter, hiding somewhere coding like a hacker?" A few scattered laughs. I pressed my lips together. "Hi, Blake, and no, I wasn't hiding, I was working. Probably in some tech basement, right?" He slapped my shoulder like he was bestowing some honor. "What do you even do now? Reset passwords for people who forget them?" I didn't answer. I glanced at his wife, Jessica, standing a few feet away, cradling her pregnant belly, scanning me head to toe. She leaned in and whispered something into Blake's ear, and both of them chuckled. My mother stepped in. "Just leave your things there, honey. Your old room's now Ollie's playroom. Blake needed an office, so we rearranged. You'll sleep on the sofa in the reading room. It's cozy. There's a fireplace." I nodded. Not surprised. Not disappointed, just confirmation of what I'd already known. At dinner, I was seated at the far end of the table, next to the wine cabinet, directly across from the entryway. Blake sat center stage, going on about blockchain for high-end interior design markets. Someone asked what I did for a living. Before I could speak, my mother cut in. "Piper does something with computers. Probably some kind of technician." I set down my knife and fork. "I'm a systems security engineer at Huron-Tech. I manage the integration of data protection frameworks for 3 major banks in the Northeast. I was promoted last month." A few seconds of silence, then Blake raised an eyebrow. "Whoa, sounds impressive. Anyway, we're actually looking for funding for a really promising real estate app. If you're free, maybe you can help us with the back end?" "No," I said evenly. "I don't work for free. Especially not for people who don't respect what I do." Blake's face tightened. My mother sighed. "Why do you always have to take everything so seriously? It's Christmas." I smiled faintly. "And today's the day. I see clearly. After all these years, none of you have changed." The room fell silent. Jessica cleared her throat. My father looked away, avoiding my gaze. I took a sip of water, then stood up. "I'll clean my plate. After that, I think I'll head out early." "Piper!" my mom called out. "You just got here." I turned, eyes steady. "No, Mom. I've always been here. You just never actually saw me." Christmas morning. Laughter echoed from the living room, the sound of gift wrap being torn and excited screams from the kids. I woke up stiff from the hard reading room sofa, my back sore, neck aching. Light spilled through the frosted window, glinting off the folded blanket my mother had left with the comment, "You used to sleep on the floor when you were little, remember?" I walked out silently, watching the family gathered round the tree, piles of presents under it. Silver paper, red ribbons, shopping bags from Nordstrom and Macy's. Each name was called out with fanfare. "Blake, here's your Patagonia jacket." "Jessica, this is from Mom and Dad, the newest juice extractor." For little Ollie, a dinosaur building set and an iPad. Each package came with compliments, cheering, and warm hugs. I stood in the doorway, holding a cold cup of coffee, waiting to hear my name. 1 minute. Then 2. Then 10. Finally, when everything had been handed out, my mother glanced around and clapped her hand to her mouth. "Oh my goodness, Piper. I'm so sorry, I thought there was one. Maybe it got mixed up while wrapping." Blake snorted, not bothering to hide his amusement. "Just like when we were kids. Remember the year you thought you were getting a game console? Turned out to be yarn and socks?" Jessica laughed, adding, "Seriously? Poor thing. But also, kind of funny." I said nothing. I simply stepped into the center of the room, set my coffee down on the table, and pulled out a small, neatly wrapped box from my bag. "I have a gift too," I said, my voice low but steady. "It's for myself." I opened the box. Inside was a hexagon-shaped metal keychain engraved with my name, Piper Emerson, and the logo of a luxury building in Park Slope. I held it up, letting the Christmas tree lights glint off the brushed steel. "This is the key to my new apartment. I closed on it last week." No one reacted immediately, then my mom blinked. "Apartment? Where?" "Park Slope, Brooklyn. 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, top floor, balcony overlooking the park." Jessica blurted out. "Brooklyn? That's expensive. Are you renting?" "No," I said, not taking my eyes off Blake's. "I paid in full, no mortgage, used my year-end bonus." The energy in the room shifted like someone had pulled the plug on the music. Blake sat up straight. "What kind of bonus pays that much?" I slowly placed the key back into the box and looked around the room. The security system framework I developed for an international bank was just approved for rollout. The IP rights are mine. After tax, the bonus was $152,000. I used part of it to buy the apartment. Mom stammered, 152 after tax? Yes. And that's not my total income for the year. Blake leaned back, arms crossed. "Well, good for you. I mean, who would have thought computers could make that kind of money?" "I did," I replied, a slight smile tugging at the corner of my mouth. My mother seemed disoriented, as if recalibrating her view of me in real time. She sat upright, switching to a sugary tone. "Piper, you should have told us. I'm so proud of you. Who would have guessed you'd be so successful?" "Certainly not the person who told me to wash dishes to learn humility," I answered. Light as air but sharp enough to slice through the fake warmth settling around the room. Blake rolled his eyes. "Come on, don't make a scene. We just wanted to enjoy Christmas." "And I just wanted to be treated like a human being." I stood tall. "Not like a shadow hanging around the edges of your celebration." Jessica turned to my mother. "Didn't you say this year was about family coming together?" My mom faltered. Yes, of course, but no one expected I'd be better than what you allowed me to dream of," I said, arms crossed. Silence fell over the room again. My dad cleared his throat. "Piper, you're right. But you have to understand. Back then, we didn't have many options." "There were always options," I cut in. "You just chose Blake. And you chose to believe I wasn't worthy." I bent down to pick up my bag. "It's fine. Because I've learned how to choose myself." I didn't need to stay to witness how their tone began to shift, but I did. I remained for exactly 20 more minutes, as if carrying out a social experiment I owed myself. And, as predicted, once they could no longer deny my success, they started looking for ways to capitalize on it. My mother spoke first. She poured me another glass of eggnog. Sickly sweet and cloying. But her voice was soft, in a suspicious way. "Piper, I'm truly proud. Seeing you grow into this, really, it's incredible. Our family always knew you had potential. It's just, sometimes your father and I didn't express it well." I lifted the glass but didn't drink. "I know. And I didn't come here for a late apology. I didn't come expecting anything." Blake jumped in, perfectly timed like a musician waiting for his solo. "You know," he said, "listening to you talk just now, I was thinking, if you invested in my startup, it could really take off. You understand tech? We've got the market side covered." I turned my head slowly, like I'd just heard English for the first time. "What startup?" "An app that connects real estate listings with small-scale investors. We've got a demo, a site, the idea. We just need initial capital." "How much exactly?" "Around 200 grand, Blake said quickly, as if scared he'd talk himself out of it. "But in return, you'd be a co-founder. Profit share, featured in reports." I laughed, dry, quiet, not a hint of amusement. I just turned down a 10% equity offer from a global bank. And you think I'd pour money into a project with no customers, no legal structure, no patents, and no cybersecurity compliance? Blake's face reddened. That's insulting. You're acting like we're amateurs. You don't need me to insult you, Blake. You're doing just fine on your own. My father stood, his tone losing any pretense of diplomacy. Piper, this is out of line. You think just because you've signed a few contracts you get to look down on your own brother? I set the glass down. No, I think I have the right to protect what I built. You used to tell me to be realistic. Well, I am. And now you say I'm cold? My mother jumped in, trying to salvage control. Piper, listen to me. You're in a good place now. Helping family is normal. Blake just needs a push to get started. If you don't trust him, then trust us. We've always put family first. I looked at her. For a long moment, then asked, slowly. Where was that family first when I was denied help with college tuition? That was different, you know it was. How? Because I wasn't Blake? No one said a word. No one dared. I slung my bag over my shoulder and stood. This family reunion ends here. Blake clenched his jaw. You're selfish. This family raised you, and now you think you're too good for us just because you made some money. I turned back. One last time. Family isn't a place where people guilt-trip you for expecting basic respect. Family is where people treat you with kindness, without expecting something in return. If that's too much to ask, then maybe we should stop calling this family at all. My mother yelled as I opened the door. You'll regret this. Don't think just because you have money you can say whatever you want. I didn't turn around. I walked out into the December cold and shut the door behind me, like sealing off a rotten chapter for good. On the drive back to Brooklyn, my phone lit up non-stop. Blake, you can't just do this to me. Mom, just a small portion, Piper. The family needs you. Dad, you'll lose everything if you turn your back on blood. I blocked each number. No emotion, no hesitation. At a gas station near Syracuse, I stopped to fill up and splash water on my face. I looked at my reflection in the restroom mirror. No tears, no regrets. I had walked away once, at 23. But this time, I wasn't just leaving the house. I was closing the last door I'd ever kept slightly open. The one labeled Hope. They'll see me one day. I returned to Brooklyn on the evening of December 26th. Snow still drifted lightly, the city still buzzed as if nothing had changed. But inside me, a quiet revolution had taken place. For the first time in years, I felt as though I had finally loosened the invisible collar my family had fastened around my neck since childhood. I took a long hot shower, filled my apartment with lavender spray, then sat alone on my balcony chair, glass of red wine in hand, gazing out at the city lights. No one yelling at me, no one calling my name, just to remind me to behave. No one slicing me down into a version that fit their warped expectations. The next morning, I woke at 8 a.m., opened my laptop and logged into my company's admin system like usual. I hadn't checked email in 3 days, over 100 unread messages. But the one that made me smile came from my direct supervisor. Piper, please read this first, important. I clicked. Happy early New Year, Piper. The board has officially approved your promotion to Global Security Architecture Lead, effective January 3rd. Your new salary package, equity increase, and expanded R&D budget will be finalized this quarter. You've proven not just skill, but grit. Thank you for choosing to stay. Karen. I didn't scream, didn't jump. I simply closed my eyes and took a deep breath. As if I'd finally reached the altitude I was always meant to breathe in. The following week, I met Elijah. No setup, no dating app. I was standing in a tiny bookstore in Borum Hill, holding a copy of The Myth of the Nice Girl, debating whether to buy it or just download it on Kindle, when a low voice beside me said, "The book doesn't tell women to be aggressive, just to be clear." I turned. A tall, lean man with wavy hair, wearing a wool coat and a deep brown scarf. "You've read it?" I asked. "Yeah. Gave it to my sister right after. Still not sure if she felt inspired or insulted." He smiled. I laughed. The first time in days. We had coffee afterward, then crepes on Smith Street. Elijah was a UX designer, originally from Denver, who'd moved to New York 2 years prior, after cutting ties with a controlling, judgmental family. He didn't ask about my past, didn't pry into why I lived alone or avoided holiday talk. He just saw me. No editing, no adjustments, no measuring. 3 weeks later, he moved in. We shared a workspace in the living room, me with my 3 monitors and mini server, him with his cactus, sketchbook and laptop. Some nights I debugged code while he sketched wireframes beside me. Not many words. Just a calm that I'd never known before. At the end of February, I bought a townhouse in Prospect Heights. Elijah stood beside me when I signed the papers, his hand steady in mine. The 2-story home had a small backyard, enough for mint and basil. We named it the Reset Point. A reminder that sometimes you have to wipe everything clean to build something truly your own. In April, we started planning a trip to Japan. Elijah had studied Japanese in college. I was obsessed with shrines and sashimi. We practiced, bowing Kyoto style, learned phrases like, "Thank you for your patience." I never imagined I'd be the kind of person who planned trips like that. Not because I lacked the means, but because I once believed I didn't deserve that kind of freedom. Over dinner one night, Elijah said quietly, "I've never met someone as strong as you, Piper." I looked at him. "I'm not strong. I just refuse to live as someone else's draft anymore." I still get a few unknown calls each month, mostly old relatives trying to reconnect after hearing rumors that I'd suddenly gotten rich. I don't answer. I don't explain. I just tag each number under "no response needed" and let them fade like a summer rain. I once believed blood ties couldn't be broken. Now I know. Family doesn't come from genetics. It comes from those who choose to stay, even when all you have left is exhaustion. And with Elijah, I found that truth. I didn't build this life for revenge. I built it so no one could ever trample over me again. And as I look out from the balcony, hand in hand with someone who doesn't need me to change, I know I chose right. I chose freedom. I chose myself. 6 months after that final Christmas in Bloomington, I received an invitation to speak at the Global Data Security Conference in San Francisco. Not as an attendee, as the keynote speaker. I was the lead architect of a leak prevention platform that had just been deployed across 6 major North American banks. I walked on stage in a tailored black suit, the spotlight hitting the front rows, where people who once made me feel small now had to look up and listen. I didn't talk about myself. I talked about code architecture, zero-day mitigation strategy, and how we built systems rooted in trust and transparency, not fear and patchwork. But when the applause rose at the end, I knew I hadn't just presented a technical framework. I had finally buried the shame that once kept me from entering a meeting room without asking permission. That night, I sat alone in my hotel room, 36 floors above the city lights. Elijah called on video from home, asking if I wanted him to book a table at our favorite Italian place for tomorrow. I laughed. "You think I want to celebrate with pasta?" "Not the pasta," he grinned. "It's the way you squint every time the waiter offers more cheese." I didn't need blood relatives to feel like I belonged. I had Lisa, who always said what others wouldn't, but with the tone of someone who stays. I had Elijah, who loved me not because I was obedient or acceptable, but because I knew who I was and didn't need permission to be that. I had my team at Tech. People who trusted me not because I had connections, but because I earned it. Line by line, decision. I still get messages from a few relatives, mostly phishing attempts. "Your mom says you just bought a new house. Think we could drop by sometime?" But Mike's under a lot of pressure. Maybe a word from you would help snap him out of it? I read them. I don't reply. I'm not angry. I've simply outgrown it. I used to think that freedom required forgiveness. Now I understand. Not everyone deserves it. And peace doesn't always have to be paid for in tears. Some things, you just lay down and walk away from. One Saturday afternoon, Elijah and I sat on the backyard steps, sipping mint tea from our own garden. He was reading, I was sketching an interface for a nonprofit project focused on senior data privacy. He looked up. Do you think they'll ever regret it? I didn't need to ask who they were. I closed my notebook and looked at the open sky. Maybe, I said. But it doesn't matter anymore. Elijah nodded. Because you don't need them? I smiled. No. Because I no longer need their approval to know I matter. That evening, I posted a photo on social media. A small kitchen, warm light, 2 glasses of wine. With a caption. A family isn't where you're born, it's where you're seen and allowed to be. Over 3,000 shares. More than 500 comments from people who'd been rejected, mocked, dismissed, but had rebuilt their lives with their own hands. I didn't want to be an inspiration. I just wanted to live, honestly. Live without bowing to judgment. Live without being told to shrink to fit someone else's frame. If someone were to ask me now whether I still hope my old family will recognize and value me, I'd say, oh. Because I've learned to recognize myself, and to walk beside those who never ask me to pay a price for being loved. In the end, I didn't answer with anger. I answered with life. And it's more beautiful than I ever imagined. Because it's mine. Completely. Without compromise, without apology. Without needing anyone's permission. Piper's story proves that true validation doesn't come from blood, it comes from the life you choose to build. When we cut ties with toxic relationships, we don't lose, we're set free. In a world where so many are still chained by family expectations, Piper chose to walk away, define her worth, and choose who gets to stay. It's not just a story of success, it's a reclaiming of identity. And sometimes, real freedom begins with one firm sentence. I don't need your approval to exist. What do you think about Piper's choice? Would you have the strength to do the same? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful, real-life stories about family and self-liberation.